Tuolla Lontoossa Jennin mä kohtasin. Halo Vepi, oho. Hän on neidosten joukossa kaunihin. Halo Vepi, oho. Suukon kirsikka silmät niin mustat kuin yö.
Well, welcome once again to another adventure of the Gloucester Bookies. And today I am joined by Sharon Love Cook, all the way from Beverly Farms.
Thank you, Wayne Soini, former valedictorian of his class at Gloucester High School, 1966.
Yeah, that was a highlight, I'll tell you.
He gives me $5 every time I mention that, so I'll mention it often.
Thank you. We have both, Sharon and I, been taking part in activities such as Fin Fun over in Rockport and in Gloucester, and we had a bunch of things that we did, but I'd like to center on the comedic side of fins, which is a rare aspect of fins, because fins are often notoriously solemn, stoic, and silent.
But we know better.
Especially being half Irish, right?
That's right, we're Mickey Fins.
Mickey Fins. And Sharon and I both had presentations. Sharon's was included jokes. And I'd like her to tell a few of her Finnish jokes that went over well.
I was able to find. I didn't write
Shaylin
these.
Lou at the presentation that she made, please.
At the beautiful Shaylin Lou. Well, I just want to mention that, Wayne, you were one of the founders of this Fin Fun. You were one of the directors. I mean, you were very much involved. You took I saw the list, the program. You took people on a bus. People went for a bus ride all over Cape Ann. Maybe you can tell a little later the different places you visited, places that I had no idea there was this history. There was a sawmill. I mean, well, there were several. I didn't go, so I didn't read it thoroughly. But maybe you could, mention a few of the historic spots that.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't immediately correct that I had much to do with the planning, organizing, and even the presentations at the Fin Fun. But Robert Ranta, our director of Cape Ann Fins, and many on a committee, served with really great aplomb on the
Finnish
occasions.
Nisua. When I went up to the third floor of Shaylin Lou, that's where we were sort of assembling. People were assembling, and what a view! I mean, if you've never been there to Shaylin Lou, my husband calls it Shirley Lou. He can never remember the name. I mean, it's so gorgeous. It just blow you away. It's all glass. The rear wall is just, it's all glass, and there you are. There's Front Beach. There's the ocean right in front of you. There's not a prettier spot, and it was a beautiful sunny day. I said, Rockport's never looked so beautiful. Well, anyway, and the minute I stepped off the elevator, I was just overwhelmed with the smell of fresh Nisua. Now, if any of you are familiar with that, Nisu, with those two little dots over the U, pronounced Nisua. My mother used to make it years ago, and I remember all I wanted to do was the braiding. I wasn't really interested in the yeast, and then, kneading it and then putting it in the oven. It was a full day making that Nisua, and apparently she made a good Nisua. People have told me this. I thought they were all the same, Yeah. I would think, why don't you buy it, But now I can really appreciate the work that goes into a Nisua, making these loaves, and I would braid it. And I remember I like that. You have 3 long rolls, and you braid it, and then coffee. She would brush coffee over it and sprinkle sugar on the top. Well, really, stepping off that elevator and smelling all that Nisua, it really brought me back home. It was like my mother's kitchen. I said, what memories? And I saw Elena Brink. She was there
Yes.
serving Nisua to everyone, and I'm sure those loaves didn't last very long, you know.
No.
But I was there because I made a suggestion early when Rob Branta and his group were planning the Fin Fun, which they hold every year. Isn't that right, every year?
Well,
or is it every other year?
There's every year there's an annual meeting.
Yes. Yes.
But independent of that, there is a New England-wide Fin Fun.
Yes.
Annual.
Yes.
And the Fin Fun annual varies where it is. In this instance, for the first time, because KPN Fins was able to support it, Fin Fun was moved. And the annual meeting in conjunction to that was moved to the same occasion, 3 days in Rockport and Gloucester.
Yes.
But we're avoiding the comedic. So
Oh,
let's
yes,
go
I'm
into
sorry. I tend to digress.
Now,
I tend to digress. I did go to the Fin Fun at Troy, New Hampshire.
That's an example of
4 years ago. So
yes.
I knew what was going to happen.
Yes.
But what a thrill for people to see Rockport and Cape Ann for the first time.
Sure.
So anyway, what I suggested was why don't we have Finnish humor, have a program about Finnish humor, and we'll see if we can find some examples because there weren't a whole lot of examples of Finnish humor. But and we also encourage people to bring in their examples of Finnish humor, to bring in their jokes, and maybe get up on the stage and share their jokes, their Finnish stories, their humorous stories, whatever, because we wanted to prove that Finnish humor is not an oxymoron. It is actual, and we found out that it's very much alive.
Well, you were successful in drawing people from the audience, volunteers, to speak.
Yes,
in the event.
Stephen, I'm going to say Dribble, but
Tribble.
Yes. He, I found out he's a Baptist minister, among other things. Right. So he was that was great because he really set the tone. He was kind of folksy and he was very comfortable.
Tell us some jokes.
Without further ado, Wayne, if you don't mind, I will like to tell these jokes. These are, I didn't necessarily tell these, but these are jokes that I had with me. I won't tell you which ones I told. What is the difference between Sweden and Finland? Answer: the Swedes have really nice neighbors.
Yeah, there's got some applause.
Apparently, Finnish neighbors aren't so. Okay, the next one. What is the most heavenly language? Finnish, because it takes an eternity to learn.
There.
I think that's true. Okay, now this one it touches on a subject that nobody wants to talk about because it's just been overdone and drinking, Finnish drinking. Yeah. That's an old chestnut.
This is as bad as
okay.
Irish.
How many fins? How many fins does it take to change a light bulb? 5. 1 to hold the bulb, and 4 to drink enough vodka for the room to start spinning. All right. This is pretty good. Question: how do you know a Finnish man is madly in love with his wife? Answer: he almost tells her. This is a good one. Question:
here we come up to the climactic moment.
Yes.
Yes, drum beat.
All right.
The best of the...
The best of the best. How do you spot an extrovert Finn? When talking to you, he stares at your feet instead of his own. Well... Well, I didn't say it brought the house down, but it was a sample of Finnish humor that I found on the internet. I did not make these up, and other people brought. And you had a couple of jokes yourself. You got up on the stage, which is wonderful. The people got up on the stage, and who's that tall fellow now? Fred.
This is not really well known, but Sharon was banned in Beverly.
Oh, yes.
Now, tell us, you had a comedy routine that you wrote up and you performed in places like Boston, up in New Hampshire.
And we went to Hampton Beach, a place I can't think of the name. Caruso's. I'm going to say Caruso's.
Open mic places.
Open mic night. Yep, very well known open mic night.
She called it marital
Blitz.
Blitz.
This was a few decades ago.
She was with a fellow
David
Gloucester
Lufkin.
fella, David Lufkin, and David Lufkin, I guess, was Desi, and you were Lucy, and you. But anyway,
Well, we didn't call each other that.
But Marital Blitz was
Yes.
on the road for toured in different places, and it would have been in Beverly, except you tell us.
Well, I used that. As part of the act, like we're supposed to be now. Dave is supposed to be a kind of guy, as it's written, as the script is written, who is just very arrogant and thinks all the girls are after him. He thinks all women love him. He's just a real egotist, as it was written, and he was my husband, and I'm always putting him down, and he's very very bold, in these statements that he makes. And so in one of the statements he makes, now, and this is the one that I hope we have an older audience will know who Frank Perdue is. All right. He said, I've got so many chicks. He said, the chicks are after me. I've got so many chicks. They call me Frank Perdue. And then I say, can I say this word?
You can.
Okay. And I say to him, you're totally wrong. I said, they call you Peckerhead. Now that word, all right, so we were going to appear at Endicott College, and the student, this many years ago, it was all women then, just on the cusp of, admitting men, and I also happened to be working there. I was teaching there, and so I was kind of a shoo-in for it when I asked if we could entertain. They were having something for the students. I don't remember what it was, but they said, "Oh, sure, we'll put out Marital Blitz will appear," and one of the deans wanted to see the transcript of our jokes, and I just happened to have it in the computer. Computers were kind of new then too, so I printed it out, and I thought it was just a formality. And then this person got in touch with me and said, we couldn't appear because I found out it was the word Peckerhead. They didn't like it. And so
that was end of your...
We were disappointed, but at the same time, we got a new title now, Band in Beverly.
I mean, Sharon made, give her a lemon, she'll make lemonade. Sharon made an advertising device out of Band in Beverly.
Yes, that's right.
It was true.
And we would tell people, I hope you're old enough for our act because we've been banned in Beverly. For those who don't know, I guess people would know, being banned in Boston, remember years ago, that was always...
If you had a book, yeah.
If you had something or you were at all racy, you could be banned in Boston. And that was, people, sought that because that meant, you had something worth listening to. You had something, They wouldn't be falling asleep over your act. But so we never appeared there, but we appeared at the begins with R. Remember, I just told you. Remington. Thank you, Wayne. Remington's in Boston, which was a big place, and they really liked us there. We were good. I think. What happened? Did Wayne get married or something? I don't think his wife wanted him to go to bars with another woman at night. I don't know why.
David Lufkin's career faltered at that point on stage, and it was left to you to carry the torch of entertainment.
And it's very hard to play two roles, one person to do his role and my role too. Impossible, in fact, and I didn't do...
Look at it this way. I like, there are people out there who are either in or from or know people and visit Long Beach. And I know that you originally, in your youth, were a resident of Long Beach.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about those.
For over 50 years, we had a cottage there at Long Beach. A wonderful place to grow up. And I was Did you want me to talk about when I was a correspondent?
Exactly. You became.
I was
This
a
is as
teenager.
a teenage reporter.
Yes.
She became a writer, at a
I
young
know.
published writer,
And
at
got
a-
paid for
at
it.
at a young age. Go
And I
ahead.
did cartoons too. They published some of my cartoons. Boy, how I wish I'd saved those. You know, you save them and then you move, and what happens? That
Yeah.
stuff gets, gets thrown out. But I'd love to have those old clippings. I remember exciting things I wrote about the jellyfish arrival, when jellyfish invasion.
And you went into characters. You interviewed people on the spot in Long Beach.
Oh,
And
yes.
you with your pencil and your, what did you have, a little pad?
notebook.
Notebook. And you wrote down, you did the question, you wrote down the answers, and then you looked up the spelling of words they did.
Yes.
You tell, because you improved your vocabulary in the course of this
Oh.
event.
Yes, I had to do cold calling. I was, after a while, you can just write about jellyfish for so long, and Red Cross swimming classes for so long. You need, and someone visiting from Worcester, and people were always Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones. You never had a first name. Well, I was only like 16 or 17, but I remember going around one afternoon. I desperately needed, I think, 4 inches of type. I would be paid by the inch. I'd type it up and submit it, and I needed more. I needed more to fill out my column, and so I went to this the back row, the cottages, and there was a man back there. I'll call him Mr. Smith. And I knocked on the door. Of course, everybody's at the beach, but I was hoping somebody would be home. Everyone's down on the beach, and he was lying on the front porch. And I remember I had my little pad, and I said, "I'm collecting news." I said, "Anything? You have anything to tell me? Anything interesting happened?" And so he said, "Oh, come on in." I remember he was drinking a beer. And he was lying there on the front porch. He said he was recuperating. And I thought, this is great, because I know adults love,
Yeah, that's the thing.
they
If
love
you're-
stories about operations.
You run into an old person, and they're ready to tell you about their surgeries and their incidents.
It happens
and
now.
You,
It happens now. I
True
think
to-
I do the same.
true to life. So he sits you down, and he's ready to
That's
talk
right,
about
on the front porch. He was lying on the cot, and as I say, drinking a beer, lying on the cot. And he said, have I got a story? He said, he's recuperating. And I said, oh, did you have an operation? And I thought, this is great. This is pay dirt. People love to read about operations.
details,
Yes.
the specifics.
So he said, he had a hysterectomy. No,
That wasn't what he had.
I would have known that. He had a hemorrhoidectomy, and I'd never heard of that, but I remember, writing
You wrote it down.
I don't know how to spell
You
it.
got the spelling.
2 H's. Did you know that? 2 H's in the
Yeah,
word.
it's
People
all
don't
part
know.
of it.
Yeah.
Hemorrhoidectomy.
If you're ever in a spelling bee, so I wrote it all down, and he told me, and I thought, I don't know if this is something I shouldn't write about, but then I thought, well, if an adult is telling me this, obviously it's all right. He wouldn't tell me otherwise, would he? This is obviously something, for human for adult consumption, and for a family newspaper.
Went into your column.
Yeah.
The column
No. That night, I was writing it up. My mother was at the kitchen table reading the Gloucester Times, as always, Gloucester Daily Times, and I was in the other room, living room, and I was writing it. And I remember I said to her, I asked her, I said, "How do you spell hemorrhoidectomy?" And I remember she said, "I don't know. You'll look it up in the dictionary." And then she said, "Why do you want to know?" And I told her about, visiting Mr. Smith and his operation. And there was this long silence, and she said, "You're not going to put that in the paper." She said, "You're not going to put that in the paper." And I said, "Well, he told me, he told me it was all right. I assume it's all right." And she said, "You can't write about that." Well, I thought, she doesn't know. He knows. It must be all
Sure.
right. And I didn't have anything else to write, so I submitted it. and I must admit she was right. That did not make it. That did
All
not,
the Times cut it out.
That did not make the.
Whoa,
You
that
know
was the-
that wasn't the lead.
Your groundbreaking story.
I should have
that would've-
taken a picture. I thought maybe they'd come
Yeah.
over and take a picture of him.
All
Maybe
right.
speak to his doctor. But
Yeah.
no, it didn't. And so I learned something there. I learned that
Yeah.
some things are not for a
Yee.
family newspaper.
Yeah, banned in Gloucester.
That's right.
Okay,
I
they
kept
haven't-
running against a.
Yeah. But by the way, and before we turn it over to Sumerian literature, so be aware that we're going to get into Sumerian literature. Sharon has written a short story, very short story.
Flash
And
fiction.
I that's what I want to
Oh.
tell the people.
Well, wait.
What flash fiction?
Well, should I
Not
do it?
everybody
I'm
knows-
sorry. Should I do it later after?
No,
Surely
do it
you've
now.
got a
Do it.
lot to say.
Do it now. Flash fiction.
All right.
Flash fiction is a really
It's becoming very popular too.
Very popular, increasingly popular. Attention spans, computer, whatever
Yeah.
influence. People are interested in reading very short, punchy stories, and sad or happy, good endings. And Sharon's contributing to the current wave with a flash fiction, and I like it. And besides that, for those people who are writing out there and feel that they're intrigued by the idea and willing to write a flash fiction, there are contests or competitions.
Yes.
And
Many now.
Although some writing competitions require an entrance fee, there are also flash fiction competitions which have no fee. And Sharon's picked up on that, being the frugal Finn.
If
So
it's
tell us
free, it's for me. That's my
it.
motto.
So here's her entry under consideration at this time. Go right ahead.
I just submitted it, yes. November 30th. Oh, that was today.
Okay.
Is there a
Okay.
November 31st?
No.
No, okay. So I submitted it right in time. It was this website, I believe it's called Publish to Death. And it's very good. It has everything, so much about writing. It has all the writing contests, the free writing contests, because they've gotten very expensive, and some of them, not that legitimate, a few of them. So this is a great site. It had a writing contest that was free, and it was a literary agency, and I can't think of the name of it, but I submitted this story. They wanted stories under 300 words. So I'll just read this briefly, because it is under 300 words.
This is an example of the kind of thing you can write in one page or less. And whatever it takes you to write one page. What is that? Is it a half hour? Is that a half a day? Is that several days? You make it happen. And you can contribute too.
And if it's a story, it's not as easy as you think, because you have to have, you have to have all the components in it. You just, explain it without explaining. All right, the title is Warren. Warren was 6 when Arthur and I adopted him. The agency said he was a quiet child, neat and orderly, a perfect match for older parents. Things were a bit topsy-turvy the first few months, as Arthur had difficulty adjusting to a child in the house. I expected this. My husband is set in his ways. Sadly, it's just Warren and me now, following Arthur's tragic ending. He died while taking a bath. His electric toothbrush fell into the tub. Arthur was always a multitasker, but I can't believe he'd be so careless. Poor little Warren was the one who discovered Arthur. He was distraught, yet at the same time very brave. Warren's a good boy, so eager to please. I'm thankful I'm not alone at this point in my life. Thus I decided we both needed a change of scenery. I was willing to go to one of those children's amusement places, Disney World or some such. Yet Warren has visions of the Rockies, and so that's where we will go. It's certainly not what I would have chosen, but the boy has been through so much. We both need a chance to heal, and so the Rockies it will be. Imagine at my age, shopping for hiking shoes.
Yeah.
Well,
And one wonders what is around the corner. But there it is.
I hope so.
Remember, she's a mystery writer. Sharon's published mysteries, and how many? 5 now?
Well, I'm working on number 4. But then I have a collection, Legend of Judgment Rock. That's a collection of mystery stories that have been published other places in other anthologies.
And
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you
I'm
for the
delighted.
Thank you for the plug.
No, I think you have been on John Ronan's show,
Oh yes,
and people
a few times. John's been wonderful.
Get it's still on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Just check for John Ronan and Sharon Cook.
And by the way,
talk
excuse
about
me,
her,
you are going to be on John's show, aren't you?
Lucky break indeed. Same thing.
Yes.
Now, if I can.
Would you like some water?
No, that's right. Given my new interest, people out there, I think, often reach a point, either before retirement or after retiring, that you can develop a new interest. And in my example, I have developed an interest in Sumerian literature, which actually is a thing, an actual thing. 3,000 years ago, these people in the area of what we now call Iraq, between 2 rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, were blessed with, among other things, clay. And what you can make out of clay is bricks, and you can also make thin, essentially, pieces of paper, would be our equivalent of piece of paper, to write on, that would be preserved a long time.
Tablets? I'm sorry, tablets?
Perfect example, perfect word. Clay tablets, where you inscribe with tools the letters and put them out to dry in the sun. All these clay tablets, dry in the sun, essentially turned to stone. So now what you carved, or put originally in clay, is carved in stone.
Right,
and any
right.
story,
That's what they mean.
Yeah, any story that you wrote, or they wrote at the time, mystery or prayer or hymn or whatever they wrote, could be read today, translated today.
No chance for revision, huh?
Yeah, no chance for revision now. But the interesting thing that I've encountered is that the people of those days, 3,000 years ago, if you go outside in Gloucester even and ask about current events, you'll find that the topic, the heated topic, even involving protests, is war or rumors of war. And it's always on the edge. 3,000 years ago, that was true as well.
Wow.
Surviving to this day, carved in stone, is a scribe's discussion of war. It's the first story sign, with a name, byline, like by Sharon Love Cook kind of thing.
Well, how did they translate it? I mean, what language was it, Wayne?
It was in
Sumerian.
Sumerian.
Yes.
And
we can read that today.
They've developed an ability to read it today.
Wow.
And I'm going to start at excuse me. Start at the end. Tom, why don't we take a brief break? What I wanted to do is to start at the end, Sharon, because at the end is what I talked about that the author signed his name in the clay tablet, and you can read it to this day. Now, this is at the end. I'll tell you more, obviously, about the story and what it is, but it's about war. And here it is. The author wanted to, in advance, congratulate and praise himself for work that would go into the royal archives. So he wrote out as if he was King Assurbanipal, the king of the time. And so the clay tablet, somewhat amusingly to you or me, says, I, King Assurbanipal, say this is a great piece of work and I'm going to put it in my library. So he signed the scribe here. Okay, now here we're gonna do it.
He's putting words in the king's mouth, is that right?
He's purporting to.
Yeah.
Here it is. I, Assurbanipal, great king, mighty king of the world, king of Assyria. Kind of odd to go king of the world and then be king of Assyria, which is like,
Well, he's covering all the bases.
Yeah. Son of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, son of Sennacherib, king of Assyria. He's like a grandson and a son of kings. Wrote, checked, and collated this tablet in the company of scholars in accordance with clay tablets and wooden writing boards, exemplars from Assyria, Sumer, and Akkad, and put it in my palace for royal reading. Whoever erases my written name and writes his own name, may Nabu, the scribe of all, erase his name.
How can you erase it? You'd have to chisel it out, Well,
he's really giving the worst threat a writer can have.
Oh, yeah.
Being erased from the record, right, with no name anymore, anything you wrote. So this is a scribe who has a vengeance in his heart for anybody that would detract from his reputation.
Yeah.
And he took upon himself the name of the king at the time, as if the king was the right author, I think, I mean, here's this clay tablet, and it looks like it's by the king. I think you don't toss that in the junkyard, or erase the name, or do anything other than reverently place it in, some storage place somewhere where it is discovered.
How would the king feel about that? Maybe he might not be that great a writer.
You got to depict. Imagine the possibility of the fellow coming in. The king has many petitioners and people, and they all want money and land and so forth. And this fellow walks into the king's palace and he says, "Have I got a deal for you?" And the king says, "What's that?" "I'll make you famous." "What do you mean famous around the world? Famous forever." "What is that?" "I'll have you be the author of my little story here."
Oh, yes.
So, okay. So he becomes really the world's first
writer,
ghostwriter, ghostwriter.
Yeah.
And what it is, it's a story about war. He had a cause. He enlisted the mighty king to put his name to a controversial writing, because the writing was actually anti-war.
Well, that's
the
good.
first of those remember in the 1960s and 70s on college campuses everywhere, they were passing out these leaflets and there were posters, anti-war.
Everybody was.
That's what you were reading about, opposition to war. And this fellow had this kind of potentially unpopular and controversial product, but he was saying, "King, sign your name to this." Now, I think he was getting in under the radar here, because if it's an anti-war work signed by the king
might have been a warmonger.
The king's not going to be censored, or no scribe is going to fail to. Remember, each tablet gets copied and multiplied.
Oh, really?
So this is not the only copy of the story.
Just think how long it took just to get an idea across.
It would take a long time.
And could others read it? They were literate, I guess.
Probably, people estimate about 5% of the population was literate, and 95% listened to other
okay.
people read these things.
Wow.
Or memorize them and then speak them in a public
Yeah.
square. That brings it's a wonderful question because it brings to mind Sumerian literature was really pretty small time. It's not like our world of you turn on the TV and you can see full color and automatic, and there's people walking around and there's multiple voices.
It's overwhelming, I know.
Overwhelming, and then musical background and soundtracks and all kinds of gimmicks and sound effects and special effects. Not so. There wasn't even a raised stage with a curtain. It was the kind of a theater where you walk around town, wherever the bazaar was, and somebody was over there hawking cantaloupes, and you were in the middle standing up and saying, "Hey guys, listen to me, I'm going to tell you a story." And it was like really small time.
Yes.
All right, so it's written that way. So anybody looking for Sumerian literature to be like Shakespeare is barking up the wrong tree. But if you say, I wonder what it was like 3,000 years ago when nobody had anything, and you'd have to sort of wing it and multiply your own voice. Remember you spoke earlier.
Yeah.
I've got a story to tell which involves 2 or 3 people speaking, but I'm going to be doing the multiple voices or something like that. Okay, Here he is, the scribe. We already went through the last part first, but the scribe who wrote the first anti-war poem in the world, history of the world, and it's called Era and Isham. Era, E-R-R-A, and Isham, I-S-H-U-M. Era and Isham. And if you can guess, the same ghostwriter who was saying, "King, sign your name instead of mine," is not going to have human beings talk. He's going to have gods talk.
Oh, gods. Oh, okay.
Because why? Because people are going to be, whoa, and their jaws will drop.
Yeah.
They're listening to some magnificent, amazing, the way gods talk and deal. They're not just listening
he's
to
believable? You think he's believable?
He was as believable as Superman.
Yes.
Yes, it went over well.
Oh,
so here we go.
Good.
He's talking here about Era, E-R-R-A, warrior of the gods. In other words, he's like the god of Mars. Mars was the god of war, right?
Yes.
Era is a warrior of the
that one.
gods. His heart urged him to make war. See, the immediate theme is right in there quick.
Yeah.
He spoke to his weapons. These early poems and stories, anything could talk. Gods could talk.
Oh.
Animals could talk.
Oh.
Weapons could talk. Things could talk.
And
people could talk. So they did. Everybody accepted that. You talk away.
And they believed him. They
believed you're talking to the weapons, and the weapons would talk back.
I would think they'd be a little more cynical than that.
They had no taste. Whatever. Nobody ever lost a dime underestimating the taste of the Sumerian people. He spoke to his weapons. Rub yourselves with deadly poison. So you kind of have an arrow, but you put deadly poison on it, and then you shoot that at the. So, and he says to the various warriors what they should do, and rise up with their swords. And Isham says, "No, don't do that. Don't go to war. Don't do all that destruction. What you should do."
The voice of reason. Yeah.
What you should do is sleep with Memi. And I'm not making this up. It's actually M-A-M-I.
Who is she?
She's she's not the talking goddess. She's just the goddess, I guess.
Oh.
Memi. M-A-M-I. So he says, don't go to war. Enjoy yourself with Mammy here. And he says,
he's getting publicity.
Okay, and what this does, it goes on. era for a while. You know, like when you shut off a Mercedes-Benz engine, it keeps going for a little while. He already had the impulse to get up and go to war, so he was talking with his weapons. So he continues that for a while.
He's trigger happy.
He's still going. He summoned first and gave orders and did this and said, "Let the mountains flee before the one who bears your fierce weapons. Destroy, all kinds of things." Well, why did the scribe go through that? I think it was to show this is what war is. There's a lot of destruction and loss and grief, pain. But he's at length to make this clear verbally. Talk about it. And Isham doesn't stop saying to
Isham is a god, the god of
another god.
But god of what?
You could make it a god of reason, like you said. I think.
Yes.
But oddly enough, he's also there's a wonderful thing in literature where you compound roles and they're contradictory or ironic. Yes. He's actually the chief of staff of the army, of the God's army.
Oh.
He's the one without whom war could not happen. He's the necessary co-signer on the check.
Yes.
He's the guy who's going to
make
it happen.
The commander?
Executive officer or something.
Yes.
Whatever.
Cadet colonel.
Second, well, that would be really the top dog,
Yeah.
which would be Era. But in this instance, there's this Isham, and he's like second in command, but he's really the one who operates the army. The army, all the, Era says march forward on the city of Lagash. And Isham issues all the orders underneath that. Get up
he
at
must
dawn,
be organized.
He's the organizer in the thing.
So there's no war.
There's no war without Isham, but Isham has to obey Era if Era really solidifies his brains and makes it certain that there's going to be a war.
Yes.
So Isham is saying, think twice about this, and it's only going to be destruction. Remember that there's already been not people, but other gods before you who have done wars. So Isham says something like, why copy that stuff? The defeat and glory and blood and has already been done by Marduk, which is another god. Oh. So, Isham goes on in the big story about Marduk's war, which was all kinds of destruction and atrocities and trouble. Oh. So again, reaffirming the anti-war message, but in a different way. It's saying, haven't we had enough of war?
Right.
Looking at Marduk.
Marduk was fighting, Wayne, I was going to say.
Well, anybody they wanted to, anybody they could think of.
Yeah.
I mean,
the neighbors, the neighboring.
I can answer that question only because I should say this is in the Sawyer Free Library.
Oh, yes.
Has this a book in stock. You can borrow it for nothing and look at it. It's got many other stories than Era and Isham, but it's called Myths from Mesopotamia, and it's an Oxford World Classic translated by Stephanie Daly, Dalley. And Stephanie Daly, to answer your question, Stephanie Daly has kindly included every time a preface or an introduction of several pages that sets things to right. So Era and Isham begins by saying, in answer kind of to your question about where do they go, where do they go to war?
Who are they fighting?
Who are they fighting? The poem does not describe a clear narrative of specific events, but rather consists of a direct discourse in which Era, Isham, and Marduk make speeches, mostly in rhetorical and declamatory style. War threatens Babylonia because of Marduk's impotence. he already had his wars. He's not.
Yeah.
He's kind of
He's learned
semi-retired.
his lesson.
Semi-retired. An era's aggression, but total disaster is narrowly averted, thanks to what? Thanks to the soothing flattery of Era by Isham, who soothes him, consoles him, eases
You're
him.
the best.
And this is a very clever guy, who's and the people I think are enjoying the dialogue or the sequence of events because they're observing it. There's only one guy standing up in the marketplace and telling them this anti-war story and how a clever fellow managed that they wouldn't all go off to war, which is they would suffer no matter which side they were on. They would suffer in the war. They would suffer losses, become widows, or children would become orphans, as well as men would be dying or disabled. There's a whole bunch of copies of this, I guess, because it was so popular as a anti-war theme.
Just think how long it took to create it, Wayne.
It was.
You can see they would use as few words as possible, I would think. I mean, you're chiseling it into stone.
Well, originally clay, which was easier, but then eventually...
Oh, yes. Oh, you're right.
Sure.
You're right.
Yeah.
It would be in clay.
Yeah.
I see. Then it would harden.
May I say, it's one of these O. Henry twists at the end of a little dialogue. Isham is saying his praise of destruction.
Yes.
But you wait for it. You'll see a twist at the end. He's saying to this attention-craving
crowd.
Era,
Era.
enacting what he was thinking. I will let wild beasts loose. I shall devastate public places. I shall let this bad omen devastate a city. I shall let the demon, supporter of evil, enter. I shall devastate. I shall cut off, and all this thing like a fire. And then Isham says, but people detest you. He says he praises.
If he does that, they will detest him. If he
do already. Because
already,
of his previous
because he's
war.
So much testosterone.
And he said, so the fellow, they're gods, but they're people really.
Yeah.
Talking is telling the war maker things he wants to hear, music to his ears.
Yes.
I will let chaos reign. I will set loose demons. Animals will destruction. Palaces will fall. Things they like hearing because they're going to be so powerful, make all these things happen.
Oh yeah.
And then they hear when there's an opening, an opportunity at the end. He says, "But people detest you."
Yes.
It's like it calls them up short.
I would
and
think
it's part of this poem. It's a magnificent, old-fashioned, amazing one-man show in front of a few people. In I won't say they're in rags, but they're not. It's not like today where people can go to Sears and Roebuck and buy a.
Yes.
But anyway, that's Sumerian literature.
And it influenced enough people that they would.
I wonder if it saved anybody's life, but it still was very popular and went all over. Kurt. I got to use my example. Kurt Vonnegut wrote the anti-war book of our time, which is called Slaughterhouse-Five.
Oh yes.
Right, and he was interviewed by a newspaper man who said, well, artists all over the United States, both authors and people who did photographs and people who did artwork, have enlisted, recruited themselves into the anti-war movement.
Yeah.
And Kurt Vonnegut said, yes, and we've had all the influence of a custard pie thrown at 10 feet. In other words,
No one's paying attention.
Impact.
I always
But
wondered about that.
Wonder if
Yeah.
the fella back in the 3,000 years ago, at the start of the anti-war movement, did more than attract a lot of other fellow artists,
right.
authors, and scribes, illiterate people, who made all copies of what he was saying. I wonder if he affected policy. I wonder if he changed a king's mind or a soldier's mind.
Yes, if it's just
Hard to tell.
even saved a few lives, it would have been worth it.
I should say, if anybody's interested, this isn't the only book on Sumerian literature that you can get from the library.
Excuse me, Wayne, and you're saying, like, this is really the first time I've heard of this interest in Sumerian literature, but you said it's very popular now, it's growing.
That's what I'm saying. It's not the only book. And there's also nonfiction history books now about Sumer, is just that name, Sumer, is a history book.
Isn't there Sumer River?
There is.
Yeah.
And this Sumer book is available for free at the Sawyer Free Library or other libraries. And you can find, besides that, just loads of others. Because in the past 10 years, I think I was telling you, past 10 years, there's been more books out about Sumerian literature and Sumeria at the time than in the previous 100 years. It's just a popular subject among, even showing up on bestseller lists. All right, the other thing I wanted to say is for writers out there, because the writers that, what is writing? In your case too, my case, we're writing alone, right? That's it. That's us and the piece of paper or the machine, and we're starting that way and writing away. But there is such a thing, and we always gravitate toward it, as writers' groups. I know you're a member of the Sisters of Crime and other things.
And Mystery Writers of America,
Mystery Writers of America.
MWA. That's the oldest.
And there's also informal groups that get together.
Oh, sure.
4 or 5 writers.
You've got one right there at the Sawyer Free Library.
That meets once a month.
Yep.
And you've been part of it too.
Yes.
We have an opportunity in, I've been a member of 6 or 7 writers groups. And I swear from experience, my own experience, that whenever a person has contributed or shared their writing, short story or the start of a novel, whatever it is that they were reading aloud to the group and then receiving back comments or questions, absolutely. If the writer has failed to cover one particular base, that's the first question. And I've been in 6 or 7 writers groups to tell you that. And it's always the same question, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, a short story or the start of a novel. The question is, I'm confused, where did this take place and when did this take place? In other words, the characters and the event might be clear. The dialogue is wonderful, the crisply written. There's a story arc going, or whatever it is. But the question that comes up from these people who are in a group of, they're already authors of their own as well, is to say, to the author, wait a minute, I'm not clear. When did this take place and where did this take place?
So you think that should be established right away?
And now I want Exhibit A, like your husband, the lawyer, would say. I want evidence. This is the very first short story in the world. It's called Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, yes.
Again, it's back to the Sumerian theme.
And
Gilgamesh,
college freshman.
Oh, we all read
familiar.
it. And you say, well, let me look and see if Gilgamesh's author, primitive and early on as he was, knew to do that.
Yes, to
and
establish
anticipate that somebody's going to say, where did this take place? And when did this take? Okay, this is the start of, this one also is at the library, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh by Herbert Mason. Wonderful translation, very short book. It's available at the library.
It would have to be short. Now, that was chiseled in stone, too,
Yeah, it
wasn't
has to be short unless you
Oh,
want
my God.
to drive it around with a U-Haul.
Think of how
But anyway,
many years,
here's
it took.
Here's the start of Gilgamesh,
Okay.
translated by Herbert Mason.
And it's the oldest written track?
Oldest short story in the world.
Oldest short story. Okay, wow.
Gilgamesh was king of Uruk, a city set between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in ancient Babylonia. You see how that base was immediately covered? Nobody's going to be confused.
Yep,
Where was this?
Where it is.
Enkidu, this is the other character, is Enkidu. Enkidu was born
A good hook.
on the steppe where he grew up among the animals. Gilgamesh was called a god and a man. Enkidu was an animal and a man. It is the story of their becoming human together.
Oh.
Now, when you take this, Gilgamesh goes back so far, and people in those days, with the absence of any motor cars or airplanes, were either walking or they're on the back of an animal to go anywhere.
Oh, right, right.
They didn't go anywhere. They were where they were born. This where they were born,
Yep.
and then there's about 10 miles around the area there. Maybe they'd get out to some parts of the 10 miles around their birthplace if there was a war, and that was it. But even those people wouldn't assume that this happened like near them. They want to hear it happened where it happened.
Yes.
It's between the Tigris and Euphrates
Yes.
in this city, and so on. And this in ancient Babylonia, like not these days, way back. Those kind of things. They didn't even keep a calendar, so there's really only today and ancient.
Ancient,
right?
right.
And
Everything is
the
ancient.
author answers. It's not today, it's ancient. It's wonderful. This is the reading and writing that we're doing lately. Sharon and I thank you for your attention. Hope that you'll see
That's
us
very
again.
interesting, Wayne. I think a lot of people, we don't really consider where it all began.
No, we don't.
Because it's not accessible, not easily, but now it is.
It's
accessible.
These days we can do it.
Thanks to
and
translators.
Thanks to wonderful translators. Herbert Mason taught at Boston University.
Did he really?
And I met one of his students who said he was a superb teacher.
Wow.
So I think it follows his book as well.
Are there other translators too? Is he the only one?
There's others.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. See you next time.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
That's right.
Tuolla Lontoossa Jennin mä kohtasin. Alo Vepi, oho. Hän on neitosten joukossa kaunihin. Alo Vepi,